that a new planner? Is that a new planner we have over there, that guy?
What's that?
Is that guy Rebecca?
I think so, yeah.
Oh.
I think so.
Have we?
Yeah.
Ready? Yeah, all good. Oh, yes, maybe, okay. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board for the City of Delray Beach. You ready to call the roll, Diane? Okay.
Aaron Savage, absent. Morris Gustafson.
Present.
Chris Brown.
Here.
Gregory Snyder.
Here.
Allison Thomas, absent. Judy Malika.
Here.
Christina Morrison.
Here. Are there any changes to the agenda, board members, or can someone approve it? Can someone make a motion to approve it as stands?
So approved. Second.
Chris and Greg. Diane?
Aaron Savage, absent. Morris Gustafson.
Present.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Allison Thomas, absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes. Minutes of April 15th, 2024. Do I hear a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Thank you. Morris?
Second.
Greg? Diane?
Aaron Savage, absent. Morris Gustafson.
Present.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Allison Thomas, absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we're going to swear in the public now. Anybody that wants to speak, could you please stand and be sworn in? Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, so now we'd like to accept any comments from the public. If you have any comments on non-agenda items, any item not on the agenda tonight, please come and speak. You have a question?
Could I talk about the infrastructure?
Not yet. It's coming. Okay. Seeing none, let's go on to the infrastructure presentation number 7A. Rebecca?
Good evening. Rebecca Dossery here, Planner and Development Services, and we also have Jason Kaufman from Public Works to answer all your detailed questions that you might have about the capital projects. So I'm going to go ahead and just briefly run through the process, and then we'll leave it open to questions. So again, this infrastructure hearing is something we hold on an annual basis per the comprehensive plan to receive input on projects that should be included in the capital improvement plan. This year it's for the fiscal year 2025 to 2029. We're looking for input for any projects over $25,000. Of course, if someone has a lower value project, we'll make sure it's forwarded to the appropriate party. So every year, the city adopts the capital improvement program. That's last year's budget. It's publicly available on the website, and then it goes through the budgeting process. So we sent out emails to different subscriber lists. We sent it out with the agendas for this meeting, and it was posted on the city website and social media. The comprehensive plan, again, asks for us to receive input during the winter months. We're a little bit squeaking out of winter now, but capital improvements are generally evaluated on the metric of whether it's critical, mandatory, or desirable. And when you're competing with dollars that are scarce, you have to use some kind of a standard, and this is one that the city applies. We received a number of comments which have been posted from the agenda, or with the agenda backup, some via email and then some at the meeting itself. So those comments are summarized in your packet. We also provided responses to these comments from Public Works and Utilities, which each of you should have a copy of at your desk. We welcome any additional comments here during the meeting, and that concludes my summary of the process.
So now we'd like to call for public comment, but before I'll read the quasi judicial rules. Oh,
So, Chair, you can read them now if you want, but this is not a quasi-judicial item. It's just a
Oh.
public hearing, so we have to take public comment.
Oh, great.
And the board can have discussion, and then there's no formal motion or action needed after that.
great. Your turn.
Montre Bennett, 323 Northwest 2nd Avenue, Dare Beach, Florida, 33444. I'm reading a list from input from members of the Set Neighborhood Alliance, and we would love to have attention geared towards these areas. First, on MLK, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, we would love to have speed bumps from Northwest 1st all the way to Northwest 10th Avenue. We would love to have a left turn signal. Well, a left turn signal is recommended to be placed on Southwest 12th Avenue and West Atlantic Avenue. A left turn signal is recommended at the intersection of Southwest 5th Avenue and West Atlantic Avenue. A left turn signal is recommended from West Atlantic Avenue when turning north on Northwest 5th Avenue. A pedestrian crosswalk is recommended at Southwest 17th Avenue and Southwest 10th Street. Sidewalks are also recommended on Southwest 17th Avenue from Carver Park to Southwest 10th Street. Adequate street lighting is recommended throughout the set. Areas of immediate concern are Southwest 17th Street, Northwest 10th Avenue from Lake Ida Road heading south. Traffic control lights are recommended at intersection of Lake Ida Road and Northwest 10th Avenue, Roosevelt Avenue, and Northwest 5th Avenue. There is excessive flooding on south of Northwest 8th Avenue and Northwest 2nd Street. We recommend removing all roundabouts in the set. They don't work and are too small. Major road improvements is required on Southwest 8th Avenue from Southwest 4th Street to Southwest 6th Street. Major road improvements are required on Northwest 9th Avenue between Atlantic Avenue and Northwest 1st Street. Major flooding occurs on Northwest 3rd Avenue and Northwest 3rd Street. On Northwest 4th Avenue at the intersection of Lake Ida Road and Northwest 4th Avenue. There's major flooding occurring on between Davis Road and Corway and Angular Drive. And that's the end of my comments.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, to the board. Judy?
I've seen the flooding that he's talking about right in front of the Daughters of Zion Church. I call it Lake Zion. But like every time it rains, it needs some kind of drainage there. And that's between, sorry, Guy. It's on Northwest 3rd Avenue between 2nd Street and 3rd Street. And I agree with all the lighting issues too. I think Morris brought that up last time too. I didn't see it on the comments, but you definitely brought that up.
Chris, anything?
No, ma'am.
Greg, anything? Morris?
Yes, I would like to. I was a part of that meeting. When we was going through the community in the set and identifying all these areas. This would be the time to ask staff for questions in regards to capital improvement projects.
I think it's a great time
Okay.
to ask that.
So I was a part of a meeting that was going through, because this is where I live. A lot of those areas I knew at one point was a part of the CIP, like Southwest 8th Avenue. I was told that was going to be addressed, and now it's going into 7 years now. It should have been addressed at least 2 years ago based on what I was told. And I know at one point it was a part of the CIP. It was one of the items a part of the community capital improvement project, but it's I don't see it anywhere listed anymore. So my question is, who makes the decision to add or remove items if they're not completed?
Thank you for your question and comments. What I can say is that Southwest 8th Avenue is on track for design. We're hoping next year. We're hoping to get state appropriations of $500,000 from the Florida legislature for design, and then we'd be requesting for roadway improvements going forward thereafter.
So you're saying the funds is not available for that project? You're seeking funds for that?
Correct.
project. And the other capital improvement projects that's currently listed here, you have funds for those, correct?
The ones that are in the CIP book
Right.
are funded, yes.
Right, and so that's why I'm asking that question. Who makes the decision? Who adds, who removes? Because this item was definitely listed on there 5 to 6 years ago.
Mhm.
But it's no longer there anymore. But now you're telling me we're seeking funds to improve that. And so, but we have projects that have been added to the CIP that was brought up in 2020 and 2022. So who makes the decision? Again, what takes priority? Who makes that decision?
It's a decision that's made at the top leadership level of Public Works, along with the city manager and the commission. I can't speak to what was in the CIP 6 years ago, as I've only been an employee here for 2 years.
Okay.
But I can certainly find out that information for you.
Thank you.
Are you Mr. Kaufman?
I am?
Okay, just wanted to make sure
Yes.
we know who you are. So, I see that you addressed my comments from before. I've gone to the DDA about this, and I've mentioned it at City Commission several times, but I live just over the bridge, and that bridge area is so dangerous on both sides. People walking across the street and cars speeding across, and it's just a recipe for disaster. I've recommended that the streets be painted, in other cities, this is what I see, the streets are painted red and says "do not cross" in big white letters, just to avoid a really big problem. So I'm not quite sure what the city's doing about that, but it's a catastrophe waiting to happen, and I really would like to see something done before that happens.
Sure. I'm assuming you're referring to Atlantic Avenue Bridge?
Atlantic Avenue.
Yes. So the segment of that part of Atlantic Avenue is under ownership of Florida Department of Transportation. So we have to coordinate any and all suggested improvements with the state. They have to implement them. But this has been something that's been on the radar for several years. As you know, there was a fatality there New Year's Eve. So we've had several meetings with them, and we're continuing the discussions as we speak.
And the other traffic hazards in our city, we have two of the worst intersections in the whole county. One being I-95 in Atlantic, and the other being Atlantic at Military. And I just want to make sure that I was involved in one of the accidents at the I-95, and it's very dangerous. Is anybody addressing how we can make I know it's FLADOT, and it's the county, but the city is ultimately responding to these issues. So isn't there something we can do to try to make these areas safer?
So each year, the county and the state puts out a list of their potential projects. They solicit feedback from us, and we are championing those efforts for the city to make those intersections safer.
Chair, are you talking about the entrance of I-95 in Atlantic, correct? Is that
When you're
intersection?
going on Atlantic and trying to get on I-95.
Yes,
It's
I can ditto
horrifying.
that. I don't understand, like, once they did the remodel, redid that street, it's been an issue ever since.
There's
And
been
also,
7 accidents.
and I see
since the
one
remodel.
often. I see them often, and then also it created a bottleneck as well. Now traffic bags up from that area where before you had a open. Now you didn't create a bottleneck, and traffic backs up all the way to 8th Avenue at times.
Well,
Further
people
than that.
don't know what to do. They say,
Yeah.
oh, this and where do
Yeah.
I go on these white poles,
Yeah.
It's a problem. Just so, okay. Any more comments?
I guess the last question I had, I didn't see an email I don't know if staff received email. I know someone's supposed to been sending an email in regards to all the issues that from the set, but I don't see that particular email. I received one, but I don't see it in here. Did you all receive an email with a list of things from the set?
I did not receive it from the city. I spoke to someone on the phone that said they were planning on sending them. So if you have that and you can forward it, we'll make sure it gets added to the final list.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Rebecca, did you want to review the whole plan now or not, the book or not?
No, we don't. We only have last year's book, so
Okay.
we're looking as we're leading up to September in the budgeting process, which is actually upon us. They're already starting budgeting meetings. So at this point, if all of these items will just be added into the discussions for that process.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to go on to quasi judicial hearings. I'd like to read the rules. This hearing shall be conducted in accordance with the City of Delray Beach quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall be permitted to present their cases. The public shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each, or a maximum of 6 minutes if the person represents an organization or group of people who are present but agree not to speak. The city commission, board members, staff, and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine a witness. The city or the applicant will be allowed to offer rebuttal testimony. The decision to approve or deny an application or appeal may not legally be made upon personal views as to whether a project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the numbers of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions must be made on the basis of whether the project meets the requirement of law, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regulations. We're ready to move forward now with agenda item A8, 354 Southeast 5th Avenue.
Yes. Good evening, board members. Julian Gudanik, Senior Planner. At this time, I'd like to enter into the record file number 2024-048. It's a major subdivision plat at 354 Southeast 5th Avenue. And at this time, I'd invite the applicant to come up and make their presentation.
Michael Weiner, Sachs and Kaplan, business address 611 Broken Sound Parkway, Boca Raton, Florida, here on behalf of Delport. Let's see if...
May I ask a question first, Michael?
Yes.
Was there any ex parte discussion? Judy?
No.
Chris? Greg? Horace? Same? I know the site very well. I've heard this before.
This should be pretty straightforward. So if I skip along too fast, just slow me down and I'll help you out. But you're absolutely right, Ms. Morrison. This is the subdivision plat for a site plan that was approved for 8 townhouse units. November of 23 was the approval dates. It's not very exciting to do plats. It's lines. It's lines on a flat page. There are requirements under state law. There are requirements under local law. So this is as sexy as it gets. And these are the lines showing the 8 lots. Now, when we go through this, I don't mean to be too cavalier about it. There are requirements, and we do meet all the requirements. There are dedications for actually a little mini park. There's dedications for utilities. There's dedications for right-of-ways. We have no problems with the staff requirements for these. It's all good. And in fact, those things are put in at the cost and expense of the landowner. There's a bond that has to be posted. That'll be posted before the city commission meeting. And I now may have given my shortest speech that I have ever given to a board in Delray Beach, Florida. But unless the staff says that I've missed something, I think we're pretty good. So seriously, thank you for your attention, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Julian?
Okay. Hello again, board members. Julian Gudanik, Senior Planner. Again, item 8A is a major subdivision plat, a recommendation to the City Commission. Property is 354 Southeast 5th Avenue. it's a vacant property. Its land use designation is commercial core, and it's located within the central business district in the central core sub-district. These are the surrounding properties for some locational context. To the north, there's a vacant lot where there is a mixed-use development that's been approved. To the south, there's some low-scale commercial, and then to the east, there is an existing townhome development. This is the subject property, again, vacant lot. And the request specifically is a major subdivision plat known as 354 Southeast Fifth Ave Townhomes. It's a replat of lots 7 through 10 of Block 104 of Osceola Park, and it's to implement the fee simple lots for a previously approved 8-unit townhouse development. This is a rendering from that approval. Again, a bit of background just quickly. 4 originally platted lots, all vacant under the same deed. In November of 2023, a level 3 site plan application for a masonry modern townhouse development was approved, and this major subdivision plat is to create the fee simple lots to implement that approved development. This is the original, this is the survey of the existing lots, and this is the plat showing the 8 fee simple lots. Just want to draw attention to a couple things that are included on this plat. On the west side, which is the north part of or the upper part of the screen, adjacent to the alley, there is tract RW, which is a right-of-way dedication that's being conveyed through the plat, 4 feet to be added to the alley, which is a requirement of this development. There's also a 10-foot drainage easement and 10-foot general utility easement towards the rear of the property, which correlates to the location of required utilities. And then on the other side, fronting 5th Avenue, split between the middle 2 parcels, which is Lot 4 and Lot 5, there is a public access easement. That was required to be placed over the civic open space that is included in this development so that the public has the right to access that. With that, there are required findings. Specifically, it's compatibility with the land use map, concurrency review, consistency with the comprehensive plan, and compliance with the LDRs. The staff report has detailed how this project complies with all of those elements. Happy to answer any specific questions. And with that, your options moving forward are to recommend approval to the City Commission for this major subdivision plat. You can recommend denial, or you can move to continue with direction. And again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone from the public want to speak on this issue? Seeing none, we'll move on to board. Is there any rebuttal, Michael, Julian, da-da-da? No, okay, good. Okay. To the board, Judy.
I don't have any questions.
Wow.
And I would recommend approval.
Okay,
at this
Chris.
time.
None from me.
Greg.
Same.
Morris.
Same.
I have 2. There's just for the record, there's going to be an association to maintain this property?
Yeah, so the applicant can confirm, but that was a question we brought up during our TAC review of the plat to understand how the maintenance of the landscaping as well as the maintenance of that civic space would be done, whether it was the responsibility of those individual lots or if it would be shared amongst an HOA. They confirmed that it would be an HOA, and if they want to just reiterate that, they're welcome to, but my understanding is there will be an HOA.
And the HOA will be in charge of maintaining the park area, and it's clearly stated as such?
They can confirm their intent. We don't have the HOA documents yet, but that was something we asked through TAC, and that was their response of their intent. So that's what we're under the impression they will be doing.
Because this is right on Federal Highway, it's going to be pretty, visible.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, someone will be. It will either be the responsibility of those individual lot owners, or it will be the responsibility of the HOA. Our understanding is that it will be an HOA that will be responsible for it.
Right? Okay, good. And you're saying that 4 feet is added to the alley, that'll make the alley 18 feet?
20 feet.
20 feet, okay.
So
good.
typically, when a dedication is required, half of that sum comes from the property, except in instances where there's single-family residential on the other side.
Which there are.
Which there is, so that's why this development was required to provide the 4-foot dedication instead of 2 feet. So the total alley width will be 20 feet, which is what our comprehensive plan requires at this time.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you. Did you have something else? Did you have something else? Okay, ready for a motion?
Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah, I move that recommend approval to the City Commission for the certification of the major subdivision plat 354 Southeast 5th Avenue townhomes associated with the creation of 8 fee simple lots on the property currently addressed as 354 Southeast 5th Avenue, finding that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
I second that.
Judy seconded. Any discussion? No. Diane, we're ready?
Aaron Savage absent. Morris Christopherson.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Allison Thomas absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to number, is it 8B, the abandonment of the right-of-way in Federal Highway. Is there any are there any ex parte discussion? Judy?
No.
Ex parte.
No.
Yeah, I went down to the lot and looked at it and didn't buy a car.
You didn't? Bruce,
I
did
was
you
offered-
hear that he didn't buy a
I
car?
was offered, though.
Oh, okay, good. Morris? I have to disclose that I do a lot of work with this company. If you want me to step down, I had nothing to do with the Mazda dealership. It's been there a long time. But I would be happy to step down if you feel that's appropriate.
So you're receiving any special benefit associated with this application?
I wish. I'm waiting for my car. It hasn't arrived. Bruce?
So that's a no.
That's a no.
And you didn't do any work on this application?
Did not.
Okay. Based on the very limited questions I have the opportunity to ask right now, it doesn't appear that there's a conflict. There is a statute that if you feel it's appropriate because it's a quasi-judicial item, you can voluntarily step down to avoid the appearance of impropriety, but that is within your purview to make that decision.
I don't think that's the case, so I'd like to stay if that's okay with the board.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're ready. Susanna, you ready?
Yes, so
Okay.
I'll state for the record, my name is Susanna Rodriguez and I'm a planner for Delray Beach. I would like to enter file number 2024-052 into the record. This is for agenda item 8B, which is the recommendation for abandonment of a right-of-way bisecting 2001 South Federal Highway. The applicant here is today to present.
He is a busy guy.
Again, for the record, Michael Weiner, on behalf of the applicant, which is MDR Motors LLC. That's an affiliated company of the Greco Motors Group. I don't know if we have any other. I don't think we have any pictures of this, but we'll get through it. So what we have is a. Are we into the dealership? Oh no, this is it's the Mazda dealership, and there's a platted 20-foot right-of-way that bisects the site. I think if you've been by it, you may see there's an entranceway, but it is obviously not a street. It is just an entranceway into the dealership. So there's required findings that have to be made if we're going to abandon it. There is not and will not be a need for the right-of-way for any public purpose. The abandonment does not and will not prevent access to a lot of record. The abandonment will not result in a detriment to the provisions of access and or utility services to adjacent properties or the general area. So let me explain why we need this. This particular dealership was done in 1991. And actually dates back to 1981 with respect to its automotive use. Before that, there were two plats, one that was done in 1926, 100 years old, and another one that was done in 1957. And that's how this particular situation resulted in an alleyway that was not abandoned. There were two plats that were together. So when they finally did do an automotive use in 1981, for one reason or another, and I don't think the records of the city indicated either, they failed to officially abandon this particular alleyway. But everybody knows that the alleyway was either supposed to be abandoned, wasn't abandoned, and we couldn't find the public records. Because in 1991, they actually approved, that is, the city approved, it was built with permits, a building that goes across this particular piece of property, and I do believe that the city staff has pictures of those present improvements on the property. So it was always obvious, since 1991 the building has been up, that's more than 30 years ago, that this particular property was abandoned or should have been abandoned, but there isn't any record of it. So what we're really looking here is a housekeeping issue. And so when you look at it, you will see it doesn't have any public purpose. It did not have any public purpose for 30 years. Nobody went there. There's obviously a building built in the middle of it, or actually at the end of it. It doesn't prevent access to anything. No one's used it for access for more than 30 years. And it doesn't result in the detriment of the provision of access and or utility services to adjacent properties. Now, no one is, I guess it just was before computers, no one really has an understanding of how this particular condition existed for so long, but there is some issues with respect to utilities in it. We are getting the utilities so that they are actually demarcated and improving the situation so that we know where the utilities will lie. So nothing's really changing except on paper, and that was as a result of the original two plats that were never joined in 1981 when it became an automotive use. Let me see if we have any pictures here. There's the actual picture of the alleyway. I do believe the city staff has Google Maps, which will show you the condition as it exists. So under those circumstances, since we meet the requirements of the LDRs with respect to the abandonment of a right-of-way, we're asking for your affirmative approval.
Thank you. Susanna, when you're ready.
Once again, this is for the recommendation for a right-of-way abandonment bisecting 2001 South Federal Highway, the Delray Mazda. So the requested area of abandonment is highlighted in yellow. The total area is approximately 5,302 square feet, and it's bisecting the Delray Mazda automotive dealership. So you can actually see right here, this is where that building is going across, and you can see all of the parking spaces that are currently on there. So pursuant to LDR section 249B4D, the request requires recommendation from the city engineer, which was attached, and recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Board. The board's recommendation will be provided to the City Commission for consideration of the request. The following condition is required for the abandonment. The general utility easement agreement must be provided and recorded concurrently with the abandonment. Items to consider: the right-of-way is currently not accessible as an alley, as there are existing parking spaces and a portion of a structure located within that area. The Del Raton plat, when initially platted, was meant for residential use, and however the block patterns have for the most part been reconfigured to support more of the automotive dealerships, which typically require larger lots, and many of those alley networks have been abandoned. So the abandonment of this alley would be consistent with the development pattern of this area. The following are your findings. There is not, nor will there be, a need for the use of the right-of-way. The abandonment does not, nor will not prevent access to a law of record, and will not result in detriment to the provision of access and utility services to adjacent properties. Due to the existing parking spaces and structure on the right-of-way, staff does not anticipate that the request would further impede the use of the right-of-way more than it already is. The abandonment would support the separation also of the automotive use and the residential that's to the rear. These are your board motions, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Now to the public. Are there any public comments on this item? What are y'all doing here? Come on. Nobody. Okay. Okay, so any rebuttal or Michael, Susanna, any further explanation needed, Michael?
Only that I want to thank the staff for always getting better pictures than we can ever get, and I think you can see that we're both telling the same story. Nobody's missed it for 30-some odd years.
To the board.
Chair, before we begin board discussion, I know I asked about you specifically, but I also just want to confirm that your answer regarding an economic benefit or special privilege applies also to your relatives, business associates, or principals.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. To the board. Morris? Nothing?
I'm good.
Greg?
Oh, you ready for me? Do my own.
Any comments?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, the only were the things that are required, and the staff assures us that they don't see any future need. But the utilities, I wouldn't have brought this up, but you brought it up, and now I'm confused. There's utilities underneath this area, and there's going to be an easement associated with the abandonment. Is that correct?
Well, I think the staff can fill you in. There isn't a demarcation for utilities. We want to make sure that it's clean, so that where the utilities are dedicated. They're underground.
Okay, and they're under this alley.
Some of them are.
Yes. Okay, and you're going to just.
We're cleaning it up the right way. We're not taking. We don't want to be back here saying,
Yeah,
by the way, there's a utility.
I'm not
and
trying to
there's
argue.
not.
I'm trying to not be.
Yeah.
To understand exactly what's going on. Yeah, that's all. That's fine with me.
Chris?
I think it's an excellent staff report. Thank you very much.
Judy?
I read, it's the same easement question. I thought I read that there was an easement, or that you were going to create an easement after the abandonment. Am I understanding that right?
Correct. That's exactly what we're doing.
Okay,
Right.
got it.
That's just, the lines need to be drawn on the ground. You shouldn't have a utility that runs underground without actually acknowledging it.
Okay.
We're cleaning up everything.
So, okay, so after the abandonment is approved, then the dealership takes over maintenance of that area, should those lines have to be, and they have to
Anything-
fix it, and they're taking over full maintenance of this area?
Pays real estate taxes on it, yes.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, it
We
is.
like that. That's good. Now, will there be a unity of title for these two tracks now, since there's a alley in between and there's not going to be future consternation about this alley?
We'd never had a problem with unity of title for a Mazda dealership.
So actually, currently there is a plat exemption that is in, so it will actually have it where it's fully platted with the right-of-way that is abandoned.
And it'll all be one.
Be a boundary plat so that it really makes sense as it should. Because there's still some lots left
Right.
that would be single-family houses that obviously are not happening.
Right, so my question was answered by Susanna, that in the future, this won't ever come back and say, well, we need that alley. It's going to be part of this whole new.
Yes, correct.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, done. Anything else? Is there a motion?
One of us can do it.
Have the thing.
I move a recommendation of approval to the City Commission regarding a privately initiated request to abandon 20-foot wide portion of city-owned right-of-way bisecting 2001 South Federal Highway, totaling approximately 5,302 square feet, by adopting the findings of fact and law contained in the staff report, and finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in section 2.4.9B6 of the Land Development Regulations.
Second.
Greg seconded. Any further discussion? Diane, we're ready?
Aaron Savage is absent. Morris Costarfin.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Bruce Snyder.
Yes.
Allison Thomas absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes. Okay, on to item C. Again, the Mazda dealership. Susanna?
I would like to enter file number 2022-248 into the record. This is for agenda item 8C, which is the consideration of a level 3 site plan modification for Delray Mazda located at 2001 South Federal Highway. The applicant is here today to present.
Is there any ex parte? Judy?
No.
Chris?
No.
Greg?
You have visited the site. Same. No.
No? And my comments stay the same. We're ready for Mr. Weiner.
I promise you this is the last time I have to come to the microphone tonight. For
It's
the
always
record-
nice to see you, you know that.
Thank you. The record, Michael Weiner again on behalf of Greco Motors and their affiliates. Greg Molina is here. This is for a site plan modification, and since I know very little about things that are vertical, that are pretty, and Greg knows a lot about that, Greg is going to make a presentation with respect to the site plan.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening. For the record, my name is Greg Molina with GBM Architecture, PA, 330 Hermitage Street, Fort Lauderdale. 33312. Automotive dealers update business models to survive and thrive by rebranding, providing energetic, differentiated facilities, and putting the customer at the center. The project consists of an existing main Mazda dealership building with 3 smaller accessory buildings on site. The main Mazda dealership building is an existing 2-story, plus or minus 488 square foot building. The smaller buildings being 200 storage, 456 storage, 1872 wash bays. We are proposing renovations for both exterior and interior of the building with minor demo of 826 square feet, an addition of 4,360 square foot for a total of 33,022 gross square foot building, main building. This building would meet the new Mazda guidelines. The current guidelines for building height is 48, and our proposed height is 32 to match the existing building. Considering existing conditions, we are giving the building a premium appeal aesthetically, bringing the Mazda into the 21st century. Accessory smaller buildings will remain as is. Landscape improvements around the building are being proposed, and parking on site will meet the zoning requirements. So I'd like to just present the exterior elevations. And these again are Mazda prototype elevations. So it's something that we have to adhere to, which is make it work on site.
Should be one more coming. So those are the 3.
Yeah, the addition will be at the rear, and it's elongated. It will serve as there's an existing 2 bays that's like a metal building that we're tearing down, and we're now enclosing it in a hurricane-proof building with some storage above. So it's just an expansion of the existing building and just beautifying the space, because that building looks horrible right now.
And so we're not, just so I can get it on the record, we're not increasing the size of the building, right?
Not increasing the size. It's
And
to remain.
that uglier building that was across the right-of-way, that one's being
It's-
substantially renovated and I think even brought down, right?
Brought down, taken down totally.
Okay. Going along with this site plan, because this is a renovation, we have some things that we have to meet, and we have to request certain waivers. So let me just talk about that. So we're level 3, and you know the levels in Delray, so we are high enough that you have to make some required findings. You know, the land use map, concurrency, consistency, and LDRs. And again, the staff does a wonderful job of giving you the delineation of the actual subsections that have to be completed in those 4 categories. We agree with the staff report, and we do meet those. There are landscape waivers. So as I told you when we did the abandonment, this started as an automotive use in 1981, then got refurbished in 1991. That's even 30 years ago. This was built to standards that are obviously ancient. Under those circumstances, I was actually glad to see that we met as many of the standards as we did with respect to height. And for those of you who have visited the site, you can see that the presentation from Federal Highway is lush and actually, of course, when you're selling new automobiles, makes a grand presentation for the street. But some of the internal landscaping doesn't meet our present code, and it would be impossible actually create larger conditions on the site if we attempted to try to bring in this landscaping. So there's an interior landscaping. I won't mention the actual code provisions, they go on forever. There's a landscape strip, there's a landscape barrier, and there's foundation landscaping and some general landscaping requirements. I know it sounds like a lot, but they're really all, just because they're delineated under different code provisions, they all have to do with some landscaping internally that you will not be able to see with the street. So waiver criteria for these types of landscaping requirements: they shall not adversely affect the neighboring area, shall not significantly diminish the provision of public facilities, they will not create an unsafe situation, and they will not grant a special privilege. So let me see, I don't know if we've got. So that's what it will look like from the street once the new building is built. All of these are not seen from that particular area. Likewise, the landscaping, so there are some buffer islands that we won't be able to put in. But as you can see, the parking will still be landscaped and finished as it should be for this kind of use. Then there's landscaping you'll see on the left-hand side. Looking at the picture at the left-hand side, there's some landscaping requirements, and looking at the back where we won't be able to meet the internal amount of landscaping that's necessary between properties. So let me get into the particulars of that. So in this instance, the parking spaces that abut the property line at the rear where the alley is, we can't put in a landscaping requirement. The alley is still there and it's still a buffer from the other properties, but the parking itself was built in a way that it right up to the alleys. If we were to remove parking, then we get into other difficulties with respect to nonconformity. So that is one of the areas. On the south of the property, not at the east of the property, but at the south of the property, it abuts another car dealership. For 30 years, the parking spaces have just abutted each other. And we can't put in, again, another landscaping buffer between those two properties. It's internal, it's between two car dealerships. And again, we would lose significant parking spaces, which would add to other nonconformities. The other waiver is the 10% rule. So there has to be open space for 10%. That was added much later than 1991. Obviously, this was not built to that. By attempting to get to 10%, again, we would make other larger nonconformities on the site. We aren't missing by that much in any event. And then the last one has to do with foundation plantings. Again, these are old buildings. We are reskinning them, obviously. We are making them modern. We're not adding any square footage. There's no advantage here that we're getting. But since they already exist, we've taken the opportunities to put in landscaping wherever we can, but we can't make it all the way around the buildings in order to do foundation plantings. I think you'll see that the staff agrees that under the circumstances, we meet the requirements for a waiver. Given the fact that, once again, this particular property was built through the 80s and 90s, We have taken every opportunity we can to make it to the present standards. The kinds of things that we need a waiver for are those things which would actually impact the site in a different way and make it less useful and increase the types of nonconformities that you wouldn't want to see in the operation of a car dealership. So under those circumstances, we will hope that you will vote for those waivers, seeing that the conditions are met. Thank you.
Thank you.
So once again, this is for the consideration of a level 3 site plan modification with 5 requested landscape waivers for Delray Mazda. The property is zoned within the automotive commercial district. The south and west adjacent properties share the same AC zoning, and to the north is zoned planned commercial, and to the east is zoned RM. The use of the automotive dealership will remain the same. Background of the property: there are 4 structures on the site. Building 1 is a 2-story structure that consists of the main dealership with attached service bays. Building 2 is a 1-story structure consisting of the detail bays, and building 3 and 4 are 1-story warehouses for storage. The site plan is reviewed concurrently with the previously reviewed right-of-way abandonment and the plat exemption. The request is limited to building 1 and includes the following: color change from the beige with green elements to a range of grays with aluminum composite panels, replacement of the exterior storefront system, the demolition of 2 existing service bays at 826 square feet, and the addition of a 2-story structure with a service bay on the ground level, which would be at 2,180 square feet, and the expansion of the parts department on the 2nd floor, also at 2,180 square feet. I would like to just clarify the overall the site's building square footage has increased from 32,016 square feet to 35,550 square feet with that addition. The request also includes 5 landscape waiver requests that I will specify in detail in a moment. The level 3 requires a full review of the performance standards. The GC land use and the AC zoning are consistent, and the automotive dealership is a permitted use in the AC. No significant modifications impact the project's water, sewage, and drainage, and the Palm Beach County traffic performance standards are met with less than 20 peak hours generated, and the solid waste generated has been increased to 327,060 pounds. But the Solid Waste Authority has indicated its facilities have sufficient capacity to accommodate all development proposals until 2054. The modifications remain consistent with the comprehensive plan, specifically NDC Objective 2.5 for automotive dealerships. The development standards are met in regards to the proposed structure setback and the parking required for the additional square footage. Note the 156 inventory spaces within the bullpen area are not included in the parking calculations. The bullpen has been modified to remove striping for the middle tandem parking row, which pursuant to LDR section 4410 G2A, bullpen parking may store vehicles without reference to the stall striping. And bullpen parking, although not required to provide landscape strips and islands, the 10% interior landscape requirement must be met by transferring to perimeter of site or the bullpen area. Due to the nonconformity of the site's landscaping, the interior landscaping and perimeter landscape requirement are not met, and requests from these requirements are being sought. I'll explain these waivers in the next slide. So the applicant is seeking relief for 5 landscape requirements. The first one is for the overall site, and the requirement is for modifications to comply with the requirements set forth in 4616. Due to the site's nonconformity, many of the landscape regulations are not met, and specifically the following. LDR section 4616H3A, which is for the landscape strips that they must be provided between off-street parking and the right-of-way. Due to the existing non-conforming parking to the rear, directly abutting the alley, and on the property line, a 5-foot strip with adequate screening cannot be provided. So that is shown in the orange color. The LDR section 4616H3D is landscape barrier must be provided between off-street parking and abutting properties. The parking lot is directly open to the abutting auto dealership to the south, and there's no barrier provided in between. That is shown in the blue. And then LDR section 4616H3G for interior landscaping. At least 10% must be provided. The existing site has a percentage of about 4.1%, and although the modifications decrease the nonconformity, the 10% is still not met. And then the LDR section 4616H4A foundation landscaping is required along the proposed expansion on building 1. However, due to the current configuration of that rear parking space next to the alley, there's not an adequate amount of space for foundation planting. So that's shown in that teal color. The required findings are as follows. The request shall not negatively affect the neighboring area, and it should not create unsafe situations or result in the grant of a special privilege. The minimum requirement for the architectural elevations in LDR section 4618 indicate that the building must show proper design concepts and be appropriate to the surrounding area. As the surrounding area is comprised of automotive use, the modifications are deemed harmonious with the surrounding automotive use and is screened from the adjacent residential. These are your board motions, and this concludes my presentation.
Any rebuttal or?
Chair, public comment first.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Now's the time. Seeing none? Now is there rebuttal, or you guys go back and forth?
No rebuttal. I didn't mean to misspeak about the size of the buildings. I just meant that in that particular right-of-way, we weren't increasing the size of the buildings. Or the abandoned right-of-way. You can see from the pictures, which again the staff describes more graphically than we are able to, that these all are contained in the particular areas that are not seen from the street, and there are conditions that exist that are almost impossible to solve without the substantial loss of parking spaces. They have existed for 30 years, and if you'll notice, we are trying to increase the amount of open space that's being done. We couldn't get it quite to the 10% level, but we are trying to make the increases. So we hope you see that we've met the standards.
Thank you. To the board? Judy, you want to start?
Yeah, I just want to understand, you said that if you met some of the criteria for the landscaping, that you would be non-conforming for parking. What are you saying, you can't afford to lose any parking spots?
Considering the condition and the way that it presents itself for use as the Mazda dealership, the parking is already very tight. Those spaces will become useless if you try to either put parking in the front or cut off parking in the back, which is the second section that has to do with buffering between properties. We aren't actually on the property line. There still is an alley behind it. So under the circumstances, rather than going to a greater nonconformity with respect to actual parking numbers and meeting the code, it only makes sense that we retain that particular parking at the back, which can't be seen, which is next to the alley. Where we could do it that didn't hit the actual use of the property, the ability to use it as a Mazda dealership and to meet the code provisions, we did try to increase open space. So it's not a matter of our willingness to not have parking spaces. If we had any additional, There are other places that we have increased the size of the, if you want to come to the microphone. Where we could do it, we did it.
Where we did it was in front of the building surrounding the new addition. We did that. What was in nonconformity was the existing ADA parking spots. Currently, they were just coming off the front. You'd have to walk around through the driveway, and we made all sorts of conditions to make that work. And we've now are entering from the north, providing direct access into the building. So we cleaned up the ADA problems that they had on the site, as well as we're providing ADA compliances inside the building. So anything we could do, we did. Anything we tried hard, and we bettered the site. I mean, if you really look at the site plan, it's much better than what is there now.
So the current plans, the open space for 10%, you could only get to, what was it, 4.2 or something, or?
So I believe it was existing as 4.1 and now it's increased to 4.5.
Okay. Thank you.
Further? You done?
Yep.
Chris? Anything?
No.
Greg, anything?
I just want to confirm, all what we're talking about are existing nonconformities.
Correct.
That will not be corrected.
Correct.
Okay.
Morris?
I have the same question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so there's an alley in the back, and the alley separates the residential neighborhood from the dealership, right?
Right.
This is a very busy dealership. I lived in Tropic Isle for many years, and this is a busy place. So how does this new structure and the changes impact the neighborhood to the east?
It doesn't change any of the present configuration that they've lived with for the last 30 years. The only thing that it will be doing is obviously making for a better looking building. We had more, and I think you can confirm this, Greg, we had more leeway in the front in terms of putting in that extra 0.3%, which is, it only 0.3 sounds like small, but it's not when you consider the size of this site. So we kept it to be the same. There's no extra doors in the back, there's no extra activity in the back. It is the same amount of activity as there was for the last 30 years.
So the parking that has been and will continue to be along the east alley is necessary to the operation of the dealership, right?
Yes.
You can't do away with those spaces to make a pretty garden or something for the neighbors.
No.
Okay. And the new building on the east side, it looks like the additional square footage is going to be on the second floor of that building, right? We're not increasing the footprint by any marginal.
No, it's very minor. It's like I said, we're removing an existing 826 square feet,
Yeah.
and then we're adding
I'm going
the
through
difference,
their staff report,
1,400, whatever it's the difference.
I'll get back all the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's
No, they won't get back to my side. Okay.
what we are doing on the east side of the parking, because it seems to be a question, is
Yeah.
currently there's a lot of parking being provided, parallel parking,
Yeah.
and we've come back and now we're removing those stalls, those parallel parking that they're non-compliant, so it would be cleaner. Okay.
And these changes will help make the dealership be better, because right now there's cars all over the place of this site. I mean, they are everywhere on this site.
Easy.
So these changes will
They
help the
absolutely
dealership
will.
be better.
It'll be more functional.
Thank you. Okay, anybody ready for a motion or other action? Somebody.
Okay. I move to approve the Level 3 site plan modification for Delray Mazda located at 2001 South Federal Highway, including the expansion and reconfiguration of the service bays, reduction of the showroom area in Building 1, expansion of the second floor parts area, reconfiguration of the customer showroom entrances, addition of pavers in front of Building 1, and the 5 requested landscape waivers by finding that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Chris? Any further discussion? Okay, Diane, we're ready.
Aaron Savage is absent. Morris Costarfin.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Allison Thomas is absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes. Thank you, and thanks to the Greco family for creating beautiful things in our city. Thank you. Great industry.
The what?
The 2 more.
Want to take a break? Okay, we're good. May we take a break, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, no, if the board like to take a recess, it may, yes.
Okay, just 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Sure.
Oh, no.
Good idea. Okay, you got it. He'll be back.
Morris isn't back.
Okay, so we're going to reconvene and go to item,
We're still missing Morris.
yeah, he'll be back.
You have a quorum, so if you want to proceed, you can.
Item D, rezoning.
For the record, my name is Michelle Hewitt, planner, and I'd like to read Agenda Item 8D, file number 2024-098, land use map amendment, and 2024-097, rezoning into the record. We have the agent or applicant here, Jeff Costello, to present on behalf of the owners.
Greg. Oh, my goodness.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Commissioner.
we need to get sworn in, some of us.
Okay, so a lot of you came in after we sworn in, so anybody that hasn't been sworn in and wishes to speak, please stand and be sworn in. Please.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, any ex parte communication on this one? Judy?
No.
I visited the site and I talked to Mr. Costello. I visited the site and over the weekend, and I talked on the telephone with Mr. Costello.
Thank you.
I visited the site.
Morris?
And I spoke to Ms. Costello over the phone.
I know the site very well, and I spoke to Mr. Costello, so thank you very much. Jeff?
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. Jeff Costello, JC Planning Solutions, representing 200 Southeast 7th Avenue LLC, Cheryl Foreman. With me tonight is local famous architect Gary Leopoulos, GE Architecture, is going to assist me with this presentation. And with that, he's going to start it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Madam Chair, board members, for the record, Gary Leopoulos, GE Architecture. Address is 1045 East Atlantic Avenue. Normally when you're talking about rezoning, you don't get too crazy about it. It's okay, so it's rezoning. This one is pretty exciting. This one's very important. It obviously is in our Marina District. It's a special entrance into the district. Some might call it a gateway, but it is a nice feature coming in. If you know this neighborhood, it's obviously very special to the community as a whole. There is a building on the site. It is a historic church. It was built in 1942. It actually had an active congregation from 47 to 2019. The sad part is, probably from 06 on, it was like 10 members of the congregation. So it wasn't quite what you would be expecting for a congregation and having a strong following. Most of the congregation had moved up to West Palm. I believe that church right now is even closed, and now they're gone down to Boca. So there's been some history on that. As far as, let me see if I can get this to work. Here's you looking at the overall neighborhood. For those who know, we're talking about Federal Highway is west of us. So you do have CBD. Our spot right there is CF. So community facility, that's where the church is. When you look north of us, it's RM, multifamily. South of us, R1AA. And again, to the west is CBD. So you kind of look at it. Tonight, I look at this as zoning 101. I mean, just look at the piece we're talking about, and you got to say to yourself, what is the appropriate zoning for this site? And I would tell you tonight, I feel it is R1AA. I think the big thing is when you look at this, is if the site was vacant. When you're looking at zoning, you look at the use, you look at the appropriateness. If there was nothing on this site, do you think that would be R1AA and would it be appropriate? That's what I want you to think about. Now, the fact is there is a church there, and that's just an added benefit that we'll be talking about. Here is the church, and this is, again, what I'm going to be going through, what I think is a win-win situation. You're dealing with a church that not only has historic character here, but even the fingerprints of Sam Ogren Sr., our godfather of architecture, who worked on the front entry. He worked on the lower part of the steeple and added some side porches. I believe those side porches were knocked down in 56. The portion right here where you see up on the screen, which is the asphalt parking lot, you see the one story, that was actually added later on by another local architect, Charles Toth. So the big thing that we'll be talking about, and it's not even part of the zoning, is what we want is for this to go back to single family for this readaptive use. We think it's the smartest thing to do with this building. When you look at our neighborhood, again, it's a special neighborhood when you're driving through. There is a lot of single family. There is the multifamily. Even the multifamily to the north, there are still single family lots there also and homes there. So again, it has a special feel as you drive through. In that lower left-hand corner, that's actually a fourplex, but it still gives you that feeling of a quaint little beach town. We want to keep that. We don't want to change that. When you're looking at this up in the upper right-hand corner, that's the original church that came. When you see here, that's 47. It was moved from Boca Raton. There's several things that we've got highlighted here, but the main thing was in 49. This is where you had Sam Ogren. He had worked on the front entry. He worked on the side porches. Although it doesn't get highlighted, the bottom part of the steeple he did work on. The porches were removed in 56. The addition that I talked about before by Charles Toth was in 92, but there's the part that stands out. In 93, the property was rezoned from R1 AA to CF. We're just actually asking to go back to what we were. We're not asking to create anything different. There's no reason why this adaptive reuse of a church to a single family can't happen. It is a classic example that's been going on all over the country. When this was for sale, I did go to the church for 2 different developers, all of them typical, looking at costs. We're talking about doing multifamily. They were going to work within the envelope of the church, but it was going to be multifamily. At least that's what they were thinking. One of my clients recently brought it up to me, Max Weinberg, and I see Roger's here, so I think he might have approached it with Roger. He too wanted to do something. He has a lot of memorabilia. He wanted to do it almost like a museum, but also as his single-family residence. Again, still similar to what we're talking about, he wanted a single-family residence there. When you're talking about this site, and you're talking about that adaptive reuse, that's quite strong within your so-called comp plan. It's in the LDRs. It's in the Secretary of Interiors. I mean, it's all about what do you do for this type of use. I know some people have been upset. Some people say it should remain a church. It should remain CF. But if it's not going to survive, how do you make it survive? You need to have some kind of use that's actually going to put money and infuse it into it. And this is what would be perfect for this neighborhood as a single-family resident. These are just some examples. This is Florida of churches that have been changed to single-family. They all still same with the same character and everything. They still fit within their neighborhood. Everything about it, it works. You actually just Google it, and it's all over the country. It's happening everywhere. These were just some more examples where clearly you can see they're a church. It's not losing its identity, but oh, by the way, it's a single family, and it's actually not getting... Sometimes when you're dealing with some of the museums and or uses like this, obviously you need money. You need the congregation. Some of us are probably well familiar with Old School Square. Old School Square, we know how much it costs to keep that running. We've seen as it sits there what it's cost to actually rehab it. You need activity. And that's one of the things that our client will speak to. You know, like everybody else, when you buy something, you have a vision. And sometimes even that vision has to get adapted because the fact is it just didn't work out the way they planned it. I think one of the things that when you look at something like this, somebody talks about zoning, they'll talk about, you know, did you let the horse out of the barn? Well, in this case, we're putting the horse back in the barn. We're just going back to what it was, R1 AA. We're hoping that you guys will see it our way. Thank you very much. Should you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it. Jeff?
Thank you, Gary. Again, getting down to the details of the land use map amendment and rezoning. As you see on your screen, the existing land use CF proposed LD, and the existing zoning is CF proposed R1 AA. These are just some of the slide of the uses that are allowed within both the CF and the R1 AA zoning district. A lot of this is in the backup in your staff report. You know, within the CF, there are the residential uses that are allowed are senior housing, assisted living facility, and a community residence. Well, a single-family residence isn't one of those uses. The R1 AA does allow single-family use, and it does allow a number of conditional uses, one of which is a church and child care facilities. And so with regard to the required findings, that need to be made in LDR section 3.1.1, they can be made. With regard to land use map consistency under proposed LD land use map designation, R1AA is the preferred zoning district, or one of the preferred zoning R1 districts. The detached single-family residences are allowed. A residence is allowed as a permitted use. The LD land use is intended to maintain and enhance the city's established neighborhood characteristics while supporting housing that complements the desired development pattern and intensity. Looking at the surrounding neighborhood, this is a perfect fit. The LD land use designation provides areas where the traditional single-family detached residence can be established and maintained and be protected from the unwarranted intrusion of other inappropriate uses. And the single-family residential districts are established in compliance with the provision of the goal of the housing element in the adopted comprehensive plan. Again, which calls for the preservation and maintenance of stable neighborhoods. Let me go back up. Let me go back up. Help. Here we go. So going back, sorry, did you just hit the wrong way? You're done. Anyway, with regard to onto that side, and so there again, it relates to the table NDC1 about the impacts in the LD, in the low density residential up to 5 units to the acre. However, there is no FAR. There is the FAR 1 in the community facilities. Again, the single family is preferred. Concurrency, the staff's report confirms adopted level of service standards are met, including those related to schools, water and sewer, drainage, solid waste, open space, and traffic. The consistency with the comprehensive plan. Positive required findings can be made with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Always Delray comprehensive plan, in particular the neighborhood districts and quarters element, housing element, and the historic preservation element. This policy NDC 3.1 speaks specifically to the amendment of the land use map, that the requested land use designation is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the most recently adopted comprehensive plan. It is. The development of at the highest intensity possible under the requested land use designation meets the adopted concurrency standards. It does. The requested land use designation is compatible with the land use designation of the surrounding area. We got low density to the east and the south. There is RM to the north of us. And that the requested land use designation are compliant with the provisions required in LDRs. It will be. With regard, and again, these other supporting policies, again, the LD land use map designation allows for zoning that facilitates small-scale residential development, including adaptive reuse of the existing structure to a residential use, which is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and both character and scale. Other comp plan policies are listed in your screen. They're also provided in your backup regarding the most restrictive residential land use designation that is appropriate for the neighborhood, which is the LD. Allow the low density residential land use designation for small parcels that have non-commercial neighborhood-oriented facilities such as community, clubhouses, neighborhoods, amenities, and places of worship. The reason I bring this up is the fact that, in the 90s, there was the intent of rezoning a lot of the church properties to CF, but most of them, if you look at the map, are much larger sites where they may have a school involved. In this particular case, in the R1AA, if somebody wanted a church, it is allowed as a conditional use. Again, with this site, it's no longer appropriate, and what we're looking at is the conversion to a single-family use. Other policies are listed on your screen. I'm sure they're all in your backup. With regard to the standards for rezoning that are outlined in the report, again, we comply with all the standards for the rezoning. Those that do apply are A, B, and E. Basically, the zoning changes that would result, the rezoning of the land that result in allowing land uses deemed compatible with adjacent and nearby land uses, both existing and proposed, or that if an incompatibility may occur, there are sufficient regulations to mitigate that, surrounding a single family. And then again, the most restrictive residential zoning, in this particular case, it would be the R1AA. Complies with the LDRs. When you deal with this structure, any alterations to the exterior of the structure must comply with the land development regulations, historic preservation guidelines, and Secretary of Interior standards. That's not what's before you tonight. This is just strictly rezoning. Any changes to that structure need to be reviewed separately and comply with those standards. Again, any alterations would be reviewed as part of a certificate of appropriateness with approval by staff or the Historic Preservation Board as appropriate. So as far as that site, once the change is occurring, it has to go through the appropriate process. The positive findings can be made also with regard to 245B3, B5, the findings related to the rezoning. There's valid reasons for approving a change in the zoning that are stated on your screen. We've cited number 2 and 3 that there has been a change in circumstances which makes this current zoning inappropriate, and that it is more appropriate for the property based on circumstances particular to this site and neighborhood. And with that, I'm going to conclude. Briefly, the applicant would like just to say a couple words.
We have to make it quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Foreman. I own the church. I purchased it in 2019. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it exactly, but I knew I wanted to preserve it. My husband and I have owned other historic properties here in Delray. In fact, his office is one of the Bankers Row houses that I restored, and I looked at this property in much the same way. I wanted to restore it to its former glory because it had become quite dilapidated, and it required a lot of work to get it back to its original look. And when I first purchased it, I thought perhaps I would make it an experiential museum, which was kind of new and cool, what was going on in Miami and New York. But then COVID hit. And then all of a sudden, I realized that people may never meet it together in spaces, and this would not work, where you could get a lot of people in together. So I went ahead, moved forward with using the space as a museum and using it for event spaces, which is what I have been doing for the last couple of years. However, it takes a lot of work and it's a lot of wear and tear on the building. After I'd done so much preservation, every time I see a gouge in those Dade County pine floors, it makes me crazy. It's very expensive and it really beats up the building. So in an effort to make a change, under the current zoning as CF, I have been approached by rehabs and sober homes to take over the property, but that is not my vision for this. I want to preserve it. I would really like to change it to a single family home because I think it could be more beautiful. The only change that the neighbors would see is getting rid of that parking lot that's paved over, and it would just be a more beautiful space. The building would look the same, and it would just have different people inside. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So with that concludes our presentation. And again, just look for support for the rezoning, land use map amendment and rezoning, going back to the R1AA zoning issue.
Thank you. Michelle, to you.
Thank you. All right. Once again, this is for 200 Southeast 7th Avenue.
Speak up.
Oh, yeah, sorry. This is for 200 Southeast 7th Avenue, land use map amendment and rezoning within the Marina Historic District. Okay, so here on the right, you can see the subject property outlined in red. The request specifically is to provide a recommendation to the City Commission for a privately initiated request for land use map amendment from Community Facilities CF to Low Density LD, and a privately initiated rezoning request from Community Facilities CF to Single Family Residential R1AA for the subject property. Here we have the land use map with the subject property outlined in red. On the left is the existing land use, showing the existing land use community facilities, and on the right is the proposed low density land use. Here we have the zoning map, again with the property outlined in red, showing the existing zoning on the left of community facilities and the proposed single-family residential zoning, specifically R1AA zoning on the right. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of Southeast 2nd Street and Southeast 7th Avenue, again outlined in red. And I'll just go over some brief history. In 1942, the structure was originally constructed on the Boca Raton Air Force Base, where it was moved to its current site in 1947. Around 1990, the property was rezoned from R1AA to CF. And then in 2019, a zoning certificate of use was approved to change the use from a church to a museum. The property is located within the locally and nationally designated Marina Historic District. The district was developed between the 1920s and 1940s and consists of a series of architectural styles including Mediterranean Revival, Mission Revival, and Minimal Traditional. The district primarily is consisted of 1- and 2-story single-family homes and several multifamily dwellings. The district also includes 6 commercial properties along East Atlantic, with 1 church, the subject property. The district itself was placed on the local register in 1988, with a period of significance from 1922 to 1943, which was expanded in 2009 to include 1947 to 1960. A period of significance is a time frame during which a site or structure gains historical, architectural, geological significance. Finally, the district was listed to the National Register in 2014. The structure itself is considered contributing within the district, as its historic integrity has been retained, which is not reliant on the use. Here we have an image of the front of the property. This faces Southeast 7th Avenue. Here we have the required findings, LDR section 3.1.1. The land use map designation section discusses the proposed R1 single-family residential zoning is the preferred implementing zoning district for the proposed low-density land use. Regarding concurrency, the proposal meets and is anticipated to meet the traffic, water, sewer, solid waste, and school requirements of this section. And then comprehensive plan consistency and compliance with the land development regulations are discussed further along in the PowerPoint. So going to consistency, here we have a series of applicable neighborhood district and corridor element policies screenshotted on the screen here. Important points to note include that either the existing community facilities or proposed low-density land use can provide a complementary and compatible mix of uses, including small community facility uses. The requested land use supports both community and residential uses, and that the community facilities land use is applied to community-based uses, but it is not always required for community facility to operate, nor is it required that CF land use be applied to a particular parcel. Here we have a screenshot from, again, the neighborhood districts and corridors element that indicates that there should be a demonstrated need based on circumstances such as shifts in demographic trends, which the applicant has indicated that there has been a shift in church attendance trends. Per the chart at the top, you can see that the proposed land use and zoning are considered compatible with the surrounding area. Here we have screenshots from the historic preservation element from the comprehensive plan, also underneath the consistency requirement. There is no concern with the proposed land use and zoning, as the structure itself can be retained with either designation or district. It is not anticipated to have a negative impact on the preservation of the contributing colonial revival structure, as the historic integrity is not reliant on the use, so there is no concern regarding its contributing status nor historic designation. Overall, the proposal can be considered consistent with the comprehensive plan. Okay, going into item D from LDR section 3.1.1, compliance with the LDRs. As this is within a historic district, any modifications will require review by historic preservation, whether administrative or board approval. Development is subject to the district regulations and to LDR section 4.5.1, which has the visual compatibility standards for historic properties and districts, including new construction. Here, we have LDR section 2.4.5, which lists valid reasons for approving a zoning change. The application is being considered under the second, oops, this didn't change. So again, this is the 3 lists of valid reasons for approving a zoning change. The application is being considered under the second and third criteria. The second states that there has been a change in circumstance which makes the current zoning inappropriate. If a church use were to be, the city continues to experience a high demand for housing throughout the city and surrounding the downtown area, including the Marina Historic District. If a church use were to be proposed again, it can be approved through the conditional use process under R1AA. The third criteria discusses similar intensity based on the particular site or the neighborhood. The R1AA zoning is more appropriate for the property as opposed to the CF zoning, given its size, location, and existence of residentially zoned properties on 3 sides, as well as the demand for housing. The proposed zoning is also consistent with the proposed low-density land use map designation. Here we have the list of permitted and conditional uses with single family at the top and then community facilities at the bottom. There is an overlap of some uses, including church use, which is conditional within the single family zoning and permitted within the CF zoning, which indicates that the church use can exist regardless whether it's zoned CF or R1AA. Here we have the standards for rezoning, LDR section 3.2.2. The main sections that are applicable are A, which discusses the restrictive zoning and compatibility with the surrounding area. Item D, which discusses allowing land uses which are deemed compatible with adjacent and nearby land uses. And then item E, rezoning within the coastal planning area. So further expanding on that, R1 is the most restrictive zoning district. However, R1AA is not the most restrictive within the R1 zoning, per the chart on the right. The requested zoning is the most appropriate residential district, however, given the existing development pattern and existing lot sizes in the area, including the Marina Historic District. Here we have a section on review by others. The Historic Preservation Board recommended denial of the proposal. The vote was 7-0. There were concerns regarding potential use changes. Again, as previously mentioned, any proposed modifications, whether by permit, a use change, elevation change, etc., would require review and approval by Historic. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Time for public comment. Does anybody have any comments? Please step up to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Zeller, 209 Northwest 12th Street, Delray Beach. I'm a member of the Delray Beach Preservation Trust Executive Committee and actually a former member of this board. Many of you will recall my participation. I want to introduce a copy of the resolution adopted by the Preservation Trust opposing the request for rezoning and the land use map amendment regarding this application. Can I give that to you, Diane? Thank you. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with the Preservation Trust, it's a 501c3 not-for-profit corporation formed in 2006. Our mission is to advocate for the historic and architectural heritage of Delray Beach and work to preserve structures and places in the city such as this historic church, which has been at this location since 1947. The Preservation Trust is designated by the Always Delray Comp Plan as a strategic partner for the city. Its boards, including this board, the HPB, the CRA, the City Commission. We do not receive or request any funding from the city or any of the agencies in the city. Our board is all volunteers and people who reside in the city that are concerned about the historic preservation. As such, the Preservation Trust strongly opposes this application. The board, we should suggest, should follow the recommendations made by the Historic Preservation Board, which heard this exact application on May 1st. That board unanimously voted against this application 7-0, and for all the right reasons. In essence, they're now asking this board to overturn your sister board of the Historic Preservation Board. We're not just objecting because we think this is a bad idea, which we do. Our objection is based on the failure of the applicant to follow the mandates of the comp plan. The historic preservation elements contain 4 specific goals and objectives that must be satisfied, and none of which are met by this application. Those 4 goals, I don't want to spend the time reading them. They're listed
You have
in
15 seconds.
the reservation. In
15
the resolution.
seconds.
Okay. The neighborhood districts and corridors element of the comp plan policy 3.4.1 has also not been met. That states that the applicant must show a change in circumstances based upon verified data, and that's supported by
Mr.
an
Zeller.
analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller. We have a copy of your report, so thank you very much. Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, well,
Thank
you.
you.
And I do hope you read it. The applicant
All
has
done.
not shown
All
that-
done.
Pardon me?
Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
I ask for another minute just to finish my statement.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. One more minute.
The applicant has not met the requirements and asserts only that the church's attendance has dwindled in the past decade. They bought the property in 2019. They knew what the property was. They did their due diligence for the property, and now they don't want it, and they want to destroy a historic entity in this city, and we're opposed to that. So I hope that this board takes into consideration the requirements of the comp plan that have not been met. Thank you, and thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you. Roger.
Hey, Christina, how are you?
Good. How you doing? Nice to see you.
I'm well, thank you. And to you and to your board, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Roger Cope Architects, Inc. My address is 701 Southeast 1st Street in this National Marina Historic District, and I am a preservation architect practicing Palm Beach County and Delray Beach for 39 years, I think. Not quite as long as this church has been here. As Sandy said not very long ago, this presentation was made before the Historic Preservation Board, and they unanimously denied the application. So I'm coming to you as a property owner in the district, as a concerned citizen of overdevelopment, as a member of the Preservation Trust, and as a preservation architect. Please oppose this application. There's nothing beneficial about it. We have to stop. We have to draw the line in the sand and stop overdevelopment within the 5 historic districts that we have. Let the development occur outside of those districts, please. Also, as Sandy stated, nothing outside of the powers of the current owner have occurred that changes any of the circumstances surrounding this property in any way whatsoever that would warrant this application. We all recognize that the building can certainly be repurposed, but as our comprehensive plan points out, in fact, objective NDC 1.6, Community facility land use designations, which this is a CF, should provide a full range of local or regional community-based uses primarily intended to serve the general public. People invest in the Marina Historic District because of a couple of different really unique aspects of that district that set it apart from every other district. The liveaboard public marina along the Intercoastal, incredibly unique. And this incredibly unique piece of property that is the heart and soul of the Marina Historic District. Please ensure its future. I mean, it's been sitting there for almost 80 years. And it's not like
10 seconds.
It's not like the property wants to become an R1 AA zone piece of property. It wants to stay exactly what it is, a CF zone piece of property. Please oppose the application and support the Department of Interior standards that we all have to abide by in this town, the comp plan and the HPB's previous ruling, which was unanimous denial. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, any rebuttal or comment?
Hi, not necessarily rebuttal, but the recommendation of HPB stands independent of the recommendation of planning board. So their recommendation, although it should be considered when you're weighing the decisions, is independent, and both are forwarded to the city commission. And secondly, just a reminder that there is no development request before the board at this point. It's only the land use and zoning. Any modifications to the site would be subject to the criteria in section 451, which governs historic properties. So the findings that are required for this are fairly narrow.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you're back.
Madam Chair, just really quick.
Sure.
First of all, I highly respect the two people that spoke, but the facts are this. Nobody has demonstrated anything that this building is getting destroyed, it's getting knocked down, or totally developed into something different. The fact is that's never been presented. We are talking about single family for that structure, so I think that's very important to take into place because none of the negative things that have been said, and that was mentioned at HPB, that's nothing that we've ever said we were doing. Just for the record, thank you.
And just to piggyback, with regard to the community partners element or strategic partners, this is really something you would think that the Historic Preservation Trust would want to support, is the fact that it is preserving an existing historic structure, you can't overdevelop that particular building. It's a conversion. It's not developing or redeveloping that building. We did provide the competent, substantial evidence that support the land use map amendment and rezoning. The CF is inappropriate, and the R1A, which is what it was prior to the 90s, is appropriate. And we really would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. I think now we can move on. Mars, you want to start?
Let me gather my thoughts. I'm trying to look for something real quick.
Okay.
I'd like to start.
Chris, close with the microphone on. Keep Diane happy.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the staff a question first, and then I'd like to ask Mr. Costello a question. So if this were to be granted by the City Commission to convert from CF to R1AA, do they have a right under R1AA to demolish the church?
So I'm going to let Michelle answer this because she's our
Could
historic...
you speak up, please?
Yes, Michelle is our historic preservation guru over there. So under any zoning district and any land use map amendment, any site plan changes must go through the Historic Preservation Board, and Michelle can outline that.
Yes, any request, because it's located within a historic district, the Marina Historic District, would require review by historic any level, whether it's permit, administrative, or board. So a demolition, which in theory they can request at any point, not just with potential granting of this.
Okay.
Mhm.
I have a second question. If they were to maintain the CF designation, and I've heard testimony from an expert witness, Mr. Eliopoulos, who says they're going to remodel that church into a single-family house. And he showed slides of other houses in other parts of the country. Can you do that under the CF? Can you have a single-family house under CF of a remodeled church?
So you cannot have a single-family residence under the CF zoning. However, remodeling, like interior alterations, are extremely common, and those are typically handled at an administrative level because historics are, at least our local guidelines, are looking at the exterior of the structure primarily. So rehabilitation is very common. We have people convert uses very often as long as they can meet the requirements. And then again, any sort of change that affects the exterior at that point, let's say you do an interior alteration and it triggers some sort of exterior alteration, will then require review by the board at that point.
Okay. Mr. Costello, are you available for a question?
Sure. Yes, sir.
The thing I find lacking in this application is I'm not assured of a plan. When you change it from one zoning district to another, you have a plan, you have an idea, solid idea. I haven't really heard much of a testimony. The owner came up, but I want to ask you a question. You speak with the authority of the owner?
Yes.
Okay, if you don't answer correctly, she can come up.
She can come up.
Do you intend to subdivide this property?
So, Mr. Brown, I think I may jump in just because.
All night if you want. It has relevance. The question is.
So.
It has relevance to the existence of that historic church, sir.
I understand why you're asking the question. But part of the problem and why you're not looking at a complete package, which would be a site plan and what the final product may be.
I didn't ask for one.
I know, but I'm trying to give an example. Because the applicant has to go through this process first. And after this process is done, there's no guarantee that this applicant will still own the property. So asking questions of the applicant about future plans, well, first of all, the land development regulations don't call those into the items that you're to review. So that's the biggest problem. But the second problem is that any representations made, they're not binding in your decision. You can't condition the rezoning to those types of information put forth by the applicant, and the applicant may not be the one that ultimately redevelops the property.
But Mr. Bennett, what I'm concerned about, if you can convert to R1AA and you have a right to demolish property on R1AA, now it's difficult in a marina district, difficult, but the ultimate decision maker is the city commission. And what I'm worried about is this example of a partially Samuel Ogden building is an important piece of architecture for this town. And we lose on the street I live on, Northwest 9th Street, I've lost one Samuel Ogden residence. It was a beautiful home on the corner of northeast corner of Northwest 2nd Avenue and Northwest 9th Street, and we lost the most magnificent Mediterranean Revival church house on the corner of Swinton and Northwest 9th. We lose our history of this town every year when buildings go down that are historic. And this is a 1942 building. It's a beautiful church, and I think it lends character to the Marina District, frankly. And when you go to a lot of New England homes, and I used to live in Connecticut. When you go to a lot of New England homes and you go to historic towns, what do you see first? But the churches with the steeples, colonial architecture with the steeples. So you can tell your clients you'll have a chance. And so it's important. And so why I'm asking is, what's the plan is an important question. And I don't think I'm convinced of the plan. Unless the applicant would like to talk, and I'd be happy for her to answer
But
that question.
I would still caution going down that path, because you don't want the opportunity for someone to argue that your decision was based upon something that's not defined in the land development regulations as an element to review. And whatever the ultimate plans may be for this property are not part of your analysis. And staff has told you that if there's an application for redevelopment, those concerns that you're raising will be addressed by the board tasked with that authority, which would be the Historic Preservation Board.
Well, here's the problem. When you change zoning, I think we have a right in this board to know what the plan is and the purpose of the change in zoning. That's a simple question. So what's the plan?
So we're stating what the purpose is to convert it to a residential use. As you stated about the concern with demolition, as staff has indicated, regardless of the zoning, somebody could come in and request demolition. That is not my client's intent. Their intent is to convert that to a single-family residence, and I'll transfer.
So that was the purpose of Mr. Eliopoulos' slides of those houses that were once churches.
Right.
And I wanted to also tell you that the other property that we own on Bankers Row is a Samuel Ogren house.
Could you speak up just a little bit?
The other property that we own is a Samuel Ogren home, one of the Bankers Row homes. So this was very important to me. If I wanted to be a developer and build new, I would certainly not go into a historic district, purchase this property that is landmarked, to tear it down and develop somewhere else. I buy and restore historic properties, not only here, but West Palm, in Michigan. That's what I love. I'm not here to destroy the house, the property. I would just like it to be a single family home. My goal is to preserve it.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Brown that getting this as a question of zoning and not having it associated with anything down the road is not the way that we ought to be doing business. I understand that it is the way we do business, and I'm going to have some more comments about that at the end of the meeting, but where I differ from Mr. Brown is this. Okay, your plans is not important. All I care about is the rezoning as an independent thing. And with that said, and I think that repurposing churches is a good thing, but I just, in this case, I don't see it. I think, first of all, as Mrs. Dossery said, the HPB decision is a separate decision. It goes to the commission. But it comes to us first. It's specifically set up so that their decision comes before us, before it goes to the commission. And I think, therefore, we have to give some weight to it. We can't ignore it. And the fact that they're concerned that they're going to be inappropriate structural changes and it's not an appropriate use, the things that cause them to vote unanimously against it, we have to take that into account. When I look at the comp plan, housing 1.1.10, utilize infill as redevelopment as a way to improve the neighborhood quality of life and promote neighborhood preservation and stabilization. I don't see that changing this zoning it does that. I think it detracts. 1.3, HOU 1.3 says to foster development consistent with the unique character of the neighborhood. This is not fostering any development that's consistent with the neighborhood. And then you look at historic preservation element. Objective 1.4 says implement appropriate and compatible design and planning strategies for historic sites, I don't think it's appropriate. As far as the land use amendment, it's not consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comp plan. And as far as the zoning, the two things are, there's been a significant change. I don't see a significant change. And the second thing is that I think that this change would be less rather than more appropriate to the property. And I can't support this.
Morris?
I guess this is a question. I was trying to locate R1, the zoning for R1A AA. To look at the criteria. I couldn't.
There you go.
Are you looking for the development standards or?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I guess my question is, with this being rezoned, I know the owner is saying it'll be a single family, but can you do multiple family under R1 AA?
You cannot, only single family.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have a couple questions. Could
Are you
I know?
done, Morris?
Yes, I'm done.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
honey.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
The home was originally moved from Boca, right? Could
Right.
it ever be moved away again? I mean, because what Gary said about if the lot was just sitting there, it would be a no-brainer to say, yeah, it should be R1 AA. And then I'm just looking at what are some of the uses if we kept that place there? It could be child care, adult daycare. It could be a church, obviously, because it was one. So it could be pretty much anything. Except it wasn't working out as a museum, I guess. But if the house wasn't there that everybody's loving the history of, and I do as well, which would be addressed later, I suppose, in the plans, then it would be a no-brainer to take that designation away to me.
So I think staff, in looking at the policies in the comprehensive plan about adaptive reuse, we were evaluating that rezoning to single family residential, the R1 AA, may add another tool to the adaptive reuse toolbox. Residential being a very common conversion. Excuse me, and the uses in both CF and R1 AA are very similar with the exception of this single family. So if the goal is to preserve the structure, it may support that better to be R1 AA if that residential use is part of the options for how it could be used.
Okay.
Again, with the preservation, not necessarily of the use, which was not part of the analysis of the historic district, but the structure itself and what the best way to preserve the integrity of the structure could be.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so does the existing structure fit into the LDRs of R1AA, that height of that steeple?
So the existing structure, converting okay.
It would be considered a legal nonconformity.
Oh, so it is non-conforming, so
Well,
it
I
doesn't
think
fit into R1AA.
Do you know the height of the steeple?
I don't know the exact height of the steeple, but to your point, and the exceptions to the height include belfries. So even in, as you see, there's other churches that are actually zoned single family throughout Delray Beach.
Yeah.
And many of them have steeples. So, but I don't know the exact language, but whether it's non-conforming or if it's permitted, the fact is the intent is to preserve the structure as it exists.
Okay, so then would it be appropriate to attach conditions to an approval that we move the recommendation of an approval, the condition that it not be demolished, the condition that it not be, the facade not be changed?
I don't believe you can condition a rezoning or a loom. Rebecca, that's correct? Yeah, so the board doesn't have the ability to create those types of conditions with this type of application.
Okay, so
Regarding height, I just double checked. So the max height in CF is 48 feet, whereas the max height in R1AA is 35 feet.
35 feet, right.
But if it was rezoned, it would become a legal nonconformity.
Legal nonconforming, okay. But the applicant doesn't plan on changing the facade? Okay, just
No.
one more, I know I'm 5 years old, so explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old that there's no, okay.
What I want you to think about, and I know some of you, when you were talking earlier, you said you drove by the site. This applicant's had the building for 5 years. You have to ask the question, has it been in disrepair? Has it been maintained? Clearly, this individual cares about this building. They are not changing it that way. And as you did hear, staff, if we did come back as a single family, we would be going back before HPB, and they would have to approve everything. You do need that COA. Frankly, even at CF, we can come before you and ask for demolition. We're still in the Marina District. You still need approval. Great question, Judy, with moving buildings. I've moved 15 buildings in Delray Beach. 9 of them have been Sam Ogren's. 5 of them have not been in the district, and I actually protected all of them. I believe in protecting Sam Ogren. I will stand here and state that for the record. I have never had one of my buildings that was Sam Ogren's knocked down, and I'll maintain that. Thank you.
And just to clarify that the structure can remain as is even if converted to R1AA.
Okay, so the facade may be maintained exactly like it is,
Yes.
even if it's a house?
Yes.
If it's made to a house?
Yes.
Right.
Any sort of exterior like any structure, regardless if it's historic or not, any modifications made will have to come into compliance. But as the structure exists, it can remain, whether it's in CF or R1AA. As Rebecca or Mr. Sari said, it'll be a legal nonconformity.
But any changes to the facade would have to come before the HPB, right?
Even if they wanted to paint
Yeah.
eggplant purple, that would be before
Exactly.
HPB, or whether it was if the types of facade, anything that would impact
anything
a fence, any parking areas,
Right.
all of that would go to.
Okay, the
review.
applicant did say she's going to change the parking area, so that'll have to come before us again for approval, right? Any changes?
Well, not necessarily PZB, but Historic Preservation Board.
Historic preservation,
Yeah.
sorry, okay. Right. Okay, so is it appropriate to deny something based on something that might happen in the future? I mean, so that's not what we're talking about tonight. Tonight, we're just talking about
The zoning.
changing the zoning. That's all we're supposed to be talking about, is that correct?
That's correct, and I guess it would be worth noting that they could come and request to destroy the structure, whether it was CF or whether it's R1AA. So I think an important consideration would be what protections are in the land development regulations to mitigate any negative change, and how if it's impacted by the designation, by the zoning designation. So that would be an important consideration for the board.
I almost feel like we're in a position to protect it, not destroy it. I mean, weirdly.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Build a whole bunch of rooms and put a whole bunch of borders in, whatever.
Right. Greg?
The thing is, what they say, what we're getting from the legal point of view is, it doesn't matter what you
That's
say.
right, you're right.
All we're considering is whether we want to change the zone, not you, Mr. Costello, because you presented the zoning. But the rest of the stuff is irrelevant.
Right.
And it's the sort of, the jury will not consider those comments type of Perry Mason thing.
Perry Mason. Oh, there's a voice.
There he is, Perry Mason.
You know, so, I mean, I'm not
Part
telling
of
you
the
what
objections is the historic.
I don't like it, but it's about the zoning.
It's only about the zoning.
Right, and it doesn't matter about, she does a great job. It doesn't matter about what's gonna happen to it.
Right.
We're not voting on that.
And if she were going to demolish it, wouldn't it have been easier to demolish it before paying $5,000 to hear this
whatever.
before us? I mean,
Whatever,
does it,
you know?
Shouldn't we pretend it's not even there, just a piece of land?
No, because if it was just a piece of, I personally feel
Right,
that
right.
that is a terrible argument.
Right.
What if the property wasn't there? How would you feel about it?
Right.
The property's there. That's
Of
the
course,
whole
of
point of the discussion.
Of course. But then you have to weigh all the other stuff as well.
Well, then you have to say, okay, is this the appropriate zoning for this piece of property with this church on it?
Mhm.
That's all. But the church is there.
right.
I think that CF is a better choice of zoning. I think changing the zoning is a step in the wrong direction. But that's.
But when I look at what CF permits, I'm thinking, do we want them in a single-family neighborhood? This is one of our premier neighborhoods in Delray Beach.
Yeah, I know.
Do we want some of those uses that are up there?
But the
But they're in a
R1AA has more
special
uses.
single-family neighborhood, which is a marina district.
Right.
That has tremendous weight. These districts, these historic districts have tremendous weight.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That when I look at,
We have to be extra protective for them.
right, and I agree with everything. But look at what's permitted under CF as opposed to what's permitted in single family. I think we're getting more protection to the neighborhood with the single family.
Because of childcare and adult daycare?
No, just all these other things. Urban,
She's talking about I think you're talking about CF, right? If we allow CF, you have more opportunity for more businesses in different type of mix, more of a mixed use versus.
instead of a single family.
Gotcha.
You know? Remember when we were talking about when there are other things going on in neighborhoods, and we always talked about Mrs. Brown with her apple pie, and the kids in the neighborhood always knew that Mrs. Brown had the apple pie, and when there was transients in the neighborhood, you didn't know who was going to live next door to you this week. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I just think that this neighborhood would be protected, this is just my opinion, more with the single-family zoning. I don't know. That's just my viewpoint. I think that if she were going to tear it down, she would have applied to tear it down by now. She's had it for 5 years.
You want to expound more on why you think it's more protected but under single family?
Because it'll be a single-family house.
As opposed to some of the potential that it could be if
Yeah, but what
she didn't care.
I'm concerned about is subdividing and demolition. And that's the name of the game in Delray.
Well, that's.
I think.
Every successful urban
Well,
city.
she wouldn't have hired Gary Iliopoulos if she wanted to tear it down. He's not going to tear it down.
Well, and again,
Yes, I-
staff did remind you that there's no pending development application.
Right.
And even if there was, it's not part of the review of the elements that we're looking at for findings.
Our
but-
discussion tonight.
I'll
Yeah.
try to keep away from that.
So,
All right.
Morris? You're
No,
done. Sorry.
I'm fine. I'm fine with where we're at. I don't want the board itself to get confused on what our duties tonight. So, for me, I 100% understand what they're asking for, and my focus is strictly on the zoning. Anything beyond that point is not for us tonight. But understanding R1AA, in my opinion, I think, unless you're going to leave it as it is and don't do any changes to it, is put it at risk for CF. All those other things can happen. By changing it to potentially to R1 to AA, then it limits on what can come there. And so I agree with the chair about it could protect, it's more protection than leaving it as a CF. And again, but I also understand the historic side of it. This is not why we're here tonight, to make a decision on if it's going to be demolished or not. I don't think that's the case, but that's not my decision. My focus is just strictly on the zoning. And I think by going with R1 AA, it'll be more protection for the community versus leaving as CF, just in my opinion. But hopefully the owner would not come back and do anything other than what they committed to tonight.
Any other comments from the board? Is anybody ready to make a motion?
Well, I could move a recommendation of approval to the City Commission of Ordinance number 17-24, a privately initiated rezoning request from Community Facilities, CF, to single-family residential R1AA for a 0.5021 acre property located at 200 Southeast 7th Avenue, finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the applicable criteria set forth in the land development regulation.
Second.
Morris, second. Judy recommends approval, and Morris seconded. Any more comments or discussion? Okay, Diane, we're ready to call the vote.
Aaron Savage, absent. Morris Constarfin.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
No.
Gregory Snyder.
No.
Allison Thomas is absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes.
And Chair, we need a recommendation on the land use map amendment as well. I think if you scroll up in the staff report, it'll be before the rezoning.
You are absolutely right. Motion for the land use map? Anyone?
Let me get there. Gotta read it right. Oh, this isn't right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I move a recommendation of approval of the City Commission of Ordinance number 16-24, a privately initiated request for the land use map amended, the LUMA, from Community Facilities CF to Low Density LD for a 0.5.021 acre property located at 200 Southeast 7th Avenue, finding that the amendment and the approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the applicable criteria set forth in the land development regulation. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, ready to call the vote? Diane?
Aaron Savage is absent. Morris Constarfin.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
No.
Gregory Snyder.
No.
Allison Thomas is absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Rebecca, we're on to an amendment.
This amendment you all saw previously in, let's see. Yeah, you all saw this amendment previously in March where we presented it for discussion only. The request is for the board to provide a recommendation to the City Commission on this city-initiated amendment to amend our regulations about setbacks and things that you can put in your setbacks. This started because we adopted a zoning in progress back in January. We've had a lot of requests for balconies to encroach, and our regulations for balconies are based on a director's interpretation, long-standing, that compares balcony encroachment to roof eaves. But given the number of balconies that we've been seeing as part of development plans, it was more than overdue to actually adopt regulations. So when you look at our land development regulations, you see this kind of jumbly list here. Nothing is quantified. Some are dimensional. Balconies and bay windows are not included. So it's just, it's a little difficult to interpret and well overdue for some changes. So, I mean, these are a common balcony type that is required, encouraged in the central business district. But we've been seeing, again, the more substantial balconies. So balconies are defined as a projecting platform or building, sometimes supported from below, sometimes cantilevered, enclosed with a railing or balustrade. So we've had a lot of proposals where the columns, they're having columns or solid privacy walls between it, so it ends up with almost a room projecting out into the setbacks, which can be very invasive. These balconies are even going beyond the roof overhang. So just step back a bit to generally. So when we came into this section, as you can see, it needed a lot of updates. So we took the opportunity to update the entire section. We're changing it from a list to a table, and we have 3 sections: a maximum encroachment into the setback, and then the distance from the property line depending on the height of the structure. And what we settled on for balconies was that they may extend no more than 3 feet into the front and side setbacks. We're keeping them from intrusion into the rear or side interior. So the idea is not that balconies are prohibited. We really support balconies. They make a nice architectural interest. They add a lot to a home, but we're just saying if you want your balcony to project more or have certain elements, then it just has to be within your building setback. We want our new development to be good neighbors. And then we changed some language within this section where we refer to open space. We're now calling it common open area because open space means something very specific in site plan review. So these are just some pictures of the kinds of what the amendment would allow for balconies versus something that would not be allowed within the setbacks. Again, this would, you could do it, it just has to be within the required building setback. So we're just trying to return this to the intent of how the setback encroachment was intended. We add different measurable encroachments. We don't allow solid walls between balconies. It would have to be less than 42 inch of railing, which is Florida Building Code. Bay windows also. I think this figure on the right, although lovely, is not what we would consider a bay window. It would be something more like the image on the left, and that's what we've written the regulations to allow. Again, you could do the image on the right, but you would just have to pull it back. And then awnings, these are very commonly used throughout the district to add architectural interest. So we're just assigning a number value. And then again, these are design features that we're trying to encourage: arbors and trellises. And then for improvements less than 3 feet in height, again, planter walls or steps could be within your setback. But if you are greater than 3 feet in height, certain things we would allow to be right up to your property line, like fences and walls, which have always been allowed. And then like a big play gym would have to be at least 5 feet away. And then subsequent to planning board on the 18th, we had a lot of discussion about items that the board felt were not appropriate to be right along the property line. So for one, we require a setback of 5 feet for air conditioning units, barbecue pits, outdoor kitchens, pool pump housing. And then we just changed some language to make it clearer, like sculptures, like if it's a permanent art piece, then that's subject to a requirement. We removed the regulations for fire escapes. Upon further discussion with the building department, they said it regulated a type of fire escape that is no longer used. And then we just pulled flagpoles out as unnecessary because there's state preempting regulations. We're also updating the yard encroachment for swimming pools, whirlpools, and spas. That causes a lot of confusion that's unnecessary for our contractors that are building pools. And you initially saw a draft of an ordinance that had definitions for porches and balconies. We are no longer proposing changes for those. We felt that they were really sufficient as is, just adding regulations for where balconies can go. And we added a definition for bay window so that it's clearer. Our comp plan has findings that have to be made for an LDR amendment, and that we are regularly supposed to update the LDR as development trends change, so this is just really adopting something that will help staff and developers understand what they can do where on their properties. And these are your options for board action, and I can answer any of your questions that you may have.
So when I'm looking there, I can't necessarily hear you.
Yes.
So I have to sort of read your lips. But What we're talking about, the statues?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, did you say that's allowed to be on the setbacks, or they were within the setbacks?
They're allowed to encroach.
They're allowed to encroach,
Mhm.
okay. ACs are not?
They are.
They are, now we're 5 feet, and I think before you were talking
5
about
feet,
3.
yes, correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Chris, anything?
I have no further questions.
Greg, anything?
Yeah, a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you put up the picture of the bay window again? I asked about this last time and I'm still confused.
Oh, I think I went too far here. No, I gotta go back this way.
There.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it says bay window, oh, I got it. The bay window is limited to 25% of the width of the associated interior space room.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like that window covers 100% of the interior of the room. So that would not be an acceptable bay window according to this.
Is it from the room, of the room?
It says
The width of the room.
Got it. Yeah, you're
But
right.
the
it does.
bay window can only be 1/4 of the room. Is that
So
correct?
not necessarily a quarter of the room. It would be a quarter of the width. So you're right. This is not a good example, and it depends. On this particular example, it's hard to tell what is considered the room. I don't know where the internal breaks would be. So
It says interior space / room.
yeah, so it's hard. This looks like one of those.
I mean, I don't know.
I think it's the area inside the bay window relative to the total room.
But this one, this example also, if it was back from the property line, it would be allowed. There's
I
always
understand-
that opportunity.
I
Yeah,
understand
so it
that,
would
but
be.
I'm just trying to figure out what the ordinance means.
Sure. So it would be. So let's say example.
If I have a 20-foot wide room,
If you have a 25, you could do a 5-foot bay window,
okay,
5
and
feet
that's-
wide.
Okay, I got that. I made myself a note to ask about 24 inches for fish ponds, but that seems like an awful shallow fish pond to me.
So-
but in the what we want to do, I think that's, I don't care. I don't have one, so it doesn't bother me.
We did carry that depth forward from the previous one, so if you want us to look at a deeper fish pond.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But the other thing is, and this is a language thing.
Mhm.
If you look at the ordinance itself, and you go, can you do that?
Oh, and I somehow forgot to bring a copy with me today.
I don't have a copy
Yeah, so let me
that
pull
I
it up.
can give you. Hang on.
It's on here.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, but I want Rebecca to see it. I mean, this is a little thing, but
Yeah.
but I don't know where else to tell you. It's right below the charts.
Mm-hmm.
Is parentheses 5.
Okay.
And in parentheses 5, parentheses A, it says, the minimum rear setback for attached screen porches on residential dwelling units shall be 10 feet whenever at least 50 feet of common open area, as defined in subsection C below, separates the rear property line from the common area.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to separate it from it has to be what it says in B, that
Okay.
that 50 feet of common open area separates the rear property line from the next property line. That's not what it says.
Okay, I'll have a look at that and make sure it's
If
consistent.
you just know where I'm talking
Okay.
about. Okay.
I'll go
that's
back and look.
Is
Thank
that
you.
Are you looking under the structure setback? Which one you're?
Right below the table is a number 5.
Reduction setbacks for screen enclosures is the heading.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Reduction setbacks for screen enclosures. It's just a typo.
Okay.
That was a good catch.
He always catches
Because it says
typos.
you have to be, if you have common open area that's 50 feet wide, it reduces your required setback. But what it says there is you've got to have 50 feet before you get to the common area, which
Okay.
doesn't make sense.
Got it. We'll make sure we adjust that.
Thank you.
Thank
Morris,
you.
anything?
No.
I agree.
Then
I'm
we could do this if the setbacks were bigger.
driving around this city. I'm just not pleased with the size of the structures being put on the lots in our neighborhoods. It's just horrifying that everything's gotten so big. The lots haven't gotten any bigger, but these structures are huge, taking all the daylight from surrounding properties. And I don't think anything should be in the setbacks. Setbacks are there for a reason, is to protect your house from somebody else's house. And putting things in setbacks, to me, I don't get it. I don't know why we're... And the other argument, and I want to talk about this afterwards, is these front doors on the alleys. I don't get that either. That's so degrading to our city. But anyway, I don't agree with any of this. There shouldn't be anything in setbacks in my mind. So, lost on me.
I agree with you.
Too big.
Too late.
Too late. It's too late. You're right. But
Well,
I always want to maintain the village by the sea, much as that seems to be escaping us. But I go to Judy's house, and she's got this beautiful little house in beautiful west section, and it's so charming. And the stuff that's being built now is just big boxes, you know?
We did adopt,
so
as you know,
sad.
the regulations that
It's
you
so
saw
sad.
for east of the intracoastal waterway.
Yeah.
And so I think, as counterintuitive as it seems for to allow certain things into the setbacks, given the type of development we are getting, these are designed to allow different human-scaled elements that make it feel less like a big box, and so encouraging things like balconies and other elements like that, and the architectural detailing, that's more of the intent in these regulations rather than to, I mean, we certainly have identified, as you have, that there's a lot of buildings that are pushing all the envelopes, and so not all districts have regulations that are catching it, like for
otherwise
example.
the builders would go, forget the balcony, I'm going to the end of the lot,
that's
right?
So we're trying to encourage the inclusion of those features, but that's certainly an
Why
issue.
can't it stay within it's the footprint, the footprint that's allowed? Why can't everything stay within that footprint and leave the setbacks the way they're supposed to be? I know, in a perfect world, I know.
Yeah, to me, the only other answer is, and I agree with you, but what Judy said, which is what Cynthia said the last time, if you don't allow these to go 3 feet in there, they just won't put a balcony on. They'll build it right up there, and there won't be, and you get an actual square box, which we're getting.
We are getting
Yeah,
way
and
too
we
many
don't
of
want
them.
it. We want things on the structure to give it some eye appeal. And I think that the answer is, if we're gonna let the balconies go out 3 feet, let's make the setbacks 3 feet bigger. Can
That's
we
an
do
answer.
That would be a policy directive that staff hasn't been directed to make yet, but you can certainly recommend that if that's something the board feels would be appropriate. And also, I know we have this is diverging a little bit from the point, but we are working on some analysis within the northwest and southwest neighborhood. Finally, I believe we've inked the contract with the consultant to do analysis of some of these lots to allow things like ADUs. But from that effort, we're anticipating a lot of really good data on lot configurations so that we can make some of those directions, because before we would make a big change like that, we always want to analyze first what we're working with on the lots, and then how we can contribute to a really nice built form in the city.
Yeah.
So what do you need? You need a motion or something?
Recommend motion to let me go to your motion slide.
Yeah, we do. We need to approve, deny, or amend.
Yes.
Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll do it. I don't know. I recommend approval to the City Commission of Ordinance number 13-24 on a city-initiated request to amend land development regulations, section 4.3.4, base district development standards, subsection H, setbacks, amending section 4.6.15, swimming pools, whirlpools, and spas, and amending Appendix A definitions. To add a definition for bay window by finding that the amendment and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
I will second that.
Okay. And I would like to somehow get on the record that in order to implement this, the setback should be increased.
That would be
If the board is in agreement, we can make a,
Well, I heard that as just an on-the-record statement, not an amendment or
Okay.
part of the recommendation.
I did not
But
make
that
an amendment.
correction was an amendment. The correction that you pointed out earlier, right?
yes,
No,
we'll note that.
that's
We'll
just a
correct
word
that
in it.
before.
Fix that thing. That they have a typo in there. They'll fix it before it goes forward.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we're ready to call the vote. Diane, whenever you're ready.
Aaron Savage absent. Morris Constarfin.
Yes.
Chris Brown.
Yes.
Gregory Snyder.
Yes.
Allison Thomas is absent. Judy Malika.
Yes.
Christina Morrison.
No.
Cool. Where are we?
We're done,
Nearly.
nearly.
We have to make a motion to adjourn?
We have to have comments.
We have to have comments from our staff. She changed some dates on us, right?
Yes, we had some conflicts with commission meetings. I believe these two are the normal dates. It's not until August that you have, it's the second week instead of the third week, I believe, but your dates for June and July are normal.
But you're changing August and September then?
Correct.
Okay.
Did we already do this?
Apparently not.
This is
I think it's just a
now-
reminder of your next meeting dates.
Oh,
Yeah, no change though. This is
Okay.
as is.
Okay. Okay, any other comments from the board or from staff?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, please, go
I
ahead.
mean, I hate to hold everybody up, but
All right.
I would like to talk about this whole process of piecemeal approval. Keep looking at William. It's really not his fault. It's piecemeal approval of these things. We had a couple of them come in tonight and organized differently. We had a site plan has already been approved, but oh, by the way, you need to do a plat. Why would you do a site plan without doing a plat? I mean, logically. Now, maybe that there's legal reasons why these things get separated out, but it's that kind of legal stuff that doesn't make sense. The other one was the church. That would have made a lot more sense to me to have them come in and say, here is a plan in writing of exactly what we're going to do at this property. And we need, in order to do that, we would like to get this plan approved, and it includes changing the land use and the zoning to do that.
They still could have bailed. They could have brought
No,
that
no,
plan in. And
they
then
could
said-
write the plan, they could in the end not do it.
Right.
But at least we're looking at what we're
Whole
looking
picture,
at.
whole picture.
And it isn't just tonight, those are the examples, but this happens all the time. We get the speech. That's not what you're talking about. This is a limited issue. And it shouldn't be a limited issue. In logical common sense, it shouldn't be a limited issue. It should be a whole agglomeration. I thought the streamlining of the process, which staff did a very nice job on, was going to improve that, but it still isn't what I consider right. And that's without now talking about houses that face on alleys, which,
Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
but that's my comments.
Okay, good.
Well, it's like they want the piece of land that should have been theirs all along, right? Well, there's even a building on it. Then the next thing you realize, oh, they're knocking that building down. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, there
Right.
was a line in there that says that what they want to do is make the church into a single-family
No, I was talking
residence.
about the other thing. I was talking about the Mazda dealership now.
Oh, the Mazda.
Yeah, when they
Oh, yeah, yeah.
were asking the city to abandon that piece of land because there's already a building on it anyway.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then in their plans, the building's not gonna be on it. But
Yeah, it should,
it
things
should have
be
been theirs anyway.
consolidated, yeah. That's me.
Yeah, it's kind of stupid that the city still own that slice of land in the middle of their property, you know.
And it was
the city
built on.
has to maintain it. That's stupid.
Right,
You know,
right.
didn't make any sense. Okay, Mr. Bennett, any words of wisdom before we adjourn?
Nothing this evening, Chair.
Motion to adjourn?
Do we need one?
Nope. Chair has the power to just adjourn if you're ready.
Oh, Chairman has all that.
Yep, that's done. Consider it
Pretty soon
done.
they'll give her all the zoning papers.
That would be good.
Look out. I'd get rid of all those boxes.